Take two. Take three. Take four.
Oh shit. Those are Marve. What? Someone stole the whole box. At least I didn't eat. Big tall bitch.
Alright. Excuse me, pardon me.
Of course.
Hello, Clifford.
Hello there, sir. How are you?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Man, it has been...
Really great. How is everybody today? What?
It's been a wild weekend.
Hasn't it?
Not a weekend, a weekday. Like,
It's, to say the least. How about we turn on some of that resuscitating conditioned air?
that would be
That might be
great.
because we're in the heat of Los Angeles, even
Just
though...
hit the right button.
Yeah, I know the right button. Well, the rest of the country starts to feel the real effects of autumn. We're still feeling like 79 degrees outside. And
It's like that all year long here in LA.
we get a brief cool down sometime in January, and we get a little bit of a drizzly, rainy season in February. It only lasts a few weeks. Hence our continuous statewide drought, which is just getting worse.
If LA weather were an area of Middle Earth, what would it be?
If Los Angeles were an area of Middle Earth, what would it be?
Weather-wise.
Weather-wise? I'm not sure. Perhaps the havens of Umbar, way down to the south, along the
Where's
western
that?
coast. Well, if I'm incorrect, I have to look at my map, and I'm going to use my brand new Samsung Galaxy S tablet to take a look at.
We're not sponsored by Samsung.
No, we're not, but we are
Just let you
quite.
guys know.
We are quite intrigued by our new toy.
Welcome to Torn Tuesday. My
Welcome,
name's
everybody.
Justin. That's Cliff. You can call us and text us 530-64-FRODO.
You can also call IMDb and complain to them because they have incorrectly listed the actor who plays Thrain. Everybody on Facebook is confused about it.
Okay.
Yes, and I actually looked it up, and the fellow that they have listed who plays Thrain, here we go. This is really, really crazy. Do you believe this? It says Michael Mizrahi, but that's not who it is.
Who
It's
is it?
Anthony Sher. Anthony Sher, born in 1949, stage actor, and it's completely incorrect. Look at that.
You've got a lot of conspiracy theories about this whole Thrain thing.
Why would IMDb have it wrong? Why wouldn't Anthony Sher have his agent go on to IMDb and fix it so that his proper credit is on
Maybe
the
nobody
website?
knew.
It's quite interesting. Hello, everybody. This is Clifford Broadway, longtime writer, senior staff writer, editor, and contributor for TheOneRing.net, always referred to online as Quick Beam, and you can find me Quick Beam 2000 with all the weird hand gestures, a la Doctor Strange. Whoa! How about that connection? The Doctor Strange connection to our
How about that bass?
to our dear old friend Benedict Cumberbatch.
The contract is not signed yet.
There's still whispers in the air that it would be either Joaquin Phoenix or Benedict Cumberbatch.
No, Joaquin got muscled out a long time ago.
In the talks to play Doctor Strange for the Marvel Universe?
Yeah.
We're about to go into like Marvel Universe mode in today's discussion, so here's the segue. Here's the beginning.
IMDb is never wrong. IMDb knows all, and that's from our friend Lord of Silver Fandoms in the chat room. Again, you can join us in the chat room at theonering.net/live.
Follow him on Twitter
We're
at Justin's Big Idea.
Well, no, I'm not looking at Twitter now. I'm looking at theonering.net/live.
I'm just following up with my last sentence.
Ustream.
Because I never finished my sentence.
We're on Ustream. Just look for the One Ring Net, one word.
Have
and
you
can
ever
call
read
and
one of
text
those
us.
disjointed plays where people talk in different dialogue over each other, completely different sentences?
And
And it's hilarious when you see that, like we often do.
I feel like that when I watch some movies with multiple storylines, kind of like Sin City or P.S. I Love You
Or Babel.
or New Year's Eve or Valentine's Day. There's many movies that have all these disparate storylines that happen at the same time, and you're just kind of like, where
Love
am I?
Actually.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good example.
Yeah, Mike Nichols.
Yeah, Mike
You know,
Nichols, he
but
loves doing that stuff.
Babel was a good one. What was it?
In Yaratu. And, we have... he has a new film that everyone's talking about, Birdman,
Yeah.
with our favorite Batman, Michael Keaton. And that was Mexican director Gonzalez Iñárritu. If I pronounce his name wrong, forgive me. Anyways,
Well-
how about desperate storylines and different threads crossing? Don't you think Robert Altman kind of perfected that when he did Nashville?
Well,
Nashville? Let's go way back to the 70s.
Decades ago.
Yeah,
but,
and
you know,
ancient history.
There was, I think, didn't Crash have a bunch of separate storylines?
It did.
Babel had a bunch of
But
separate
I loved
storylines.
Babel. I loved Kate Blanchett in
Traffic.
everything.
Soderbergh does
true.
a lot of parallel storylines. You know, why are we talking about storylines? Is because there's a lot of discussion about how you could possibly do the Silmarillion in a trilogy of films. You know, but actually, it would be perfect for 5 films because there are 5 books of the Silmarillion, if I recall correctly.
It is comprised of 5 major parts.
Yeah. So, but
Parts. We'd call them parts.
So, but
Not books.
the question I had for you is there enough in each of those parts for a standalone movie, or would it have to be something like Babel, or could you do like multiple storylines going on at the same time that
I think
all
no.
connect at some point with the power of Sauron or something?
The 5. Well, it would begin with the power of Melkor, whose name would morph into Morgoth. Morgoth, the original Dark Lord,
Yeah.
for whom Sauron was just a lieutenant.
Right.
Okay, come on. We're talking major powers of the Valar versus minor powers of the Maiar. But, you know, one of these fascinating things about the Silmarillion is that it crosses over a very, very long cosmological time frame. Very long time frame.
You know what other movie
You
did
could
that?
not have 5 intersecting, overlapping bits about the beginning of time, and then the early thousands of years of the first age, and then the second age after the War of Wrath. You couldn't do the
Yes,
George.
you could.
You could not do what George R.R. Martin and what the HBO showrunners very successfully do in crisscrossing different little bits of the Silmarillion. You'd have to keep that stuff kind of chronologically going.
What did the Wachowskis just do with Tom Hanks?
With Cloud Atlas?
Cloud Atlas.
What an extraordinary film.
Extraordinary,
It
exactly.
really is
and
extraordinary.
It does
underrated.
exactly,
Underrated. Jim Broadbent, Halle Berry,
Yes.
Tom Hanks. An extraordinary film.
And it does
Really.
exactly what you just said. Multiple storylines at multiple times in the long.
But it's meant to have a crisscross over many wide generations
Silmarillion,
because it's
all
about
connected.
reincarnation. No, Cloud Atlas is specifically making a metaphysical point of combining way back time and middle time and way forward time because these characters are reincarnations of the same
And Sauron
spirit.
is as old as Melkor himself. I mean, the Galadriel is as old as time herself. So you can definitely
No,
if you
No.
think I'm just saying
you're just saying.
filmmaking wise,
Yeah.
it's possible. It's technically possible and it's feasible. Cloud Atlas did it successfully. Several other movies have done similar stuff.
It's possible, but not without deepening the confusion of the viewers. In a great degree.
No way.
That is the same.
Really?
It's the same confusion that is leveled against Cloud Atlas and all the people who didn't care for it. Even when Halle Berry showed up on David Letterman, he scoffed at the movie openly while she was trying to promote it on The Late Show. She's sitting there in the Ed Sullivan Theater, and you know what? You know what Dave said to her? He's like, he laughed and he chuckled and he's like, what was that? What was that about? I got lost in the whole thing. And she went, I know, Dave, I know. And she tried to defend it. And why should the lead and A-list Oscar-winning star try to be put in a difficult pinch to defend the narrative?
A lot of people didn't like the movie.
Because a lot of people are confused by
They didn't understand
splicing
it.
time and narrative the way you're suggesting. Why does it work on the HBO show Game of Thrones? Why does it work so well?
Why wouldn't it work?
People still complain about Game of Thrones being too complex.
Why wouldn't the
They do.
Silmarillion work in a similar aspect?
The Silmarillion goes across a much vaster cosmological frame of time.
Then Cloud Atlas? I don't believe that.
Well, you don't have... I don't think you have a narrative impetus or reason to try to crisscross time frames in a Silmarillion
if
retelling.
you want to tell the Silmarillion on
You
film,
should
you've
keep
got...
it chock-a-block separate by the 5 parts as they are.
So,
Begin at the beginning, go on until you come to the end,
begin the beginning.
and then stop. Just like Lewis Carroll said.
Is there
We'll
enough
begin at the beginning, we'll go on till we get to the end.
Is
That's
there
what Lewis
enough
Carroll
in
said.
each of the 5 books of the Silmarillion to make a movie on their own?
No, even the fifth
Okay,
part.
there you go.
The fifth.
There
well,
you go.
no, I
Why
don't know if you could
couldn't
make
you-
a movie on its own as much as you could. You want to
Two
really,
movies?
you want to
Two
bear it down.
movies?
There's some major parts like the Quenta Silmarillion that could be broken down to 7 years worth, 7 seasons on HBO. If you wanted to make it a long form television format, you could have the Akalabeth be its own separate thing, the Ainu Lindale at the very beginning be its own separate thing. But gosh, it's hard to say because
Lord of
it
the-
covers so much time.
I'm looking in the chat room. Lord of the Silver Phantom says he's just reading the comments because Cliff and Justin are talking of confusing things. Let's try to break this down. Let's try to break this down because I'm getting a little lost. Okay.
All right.
The
The main discussion is the body of work that Tolkien left us with posthumously, the Silmarillion, the one that we know doesn't have any rights to be filmed and had no rights from
We're
the
not
family.
talking about
We
rights.
know. So I'm just saying this is all a hypothetical. So join us as we engineer this thought project. This is a creative thought exercise. Join us.
we're starting from the point of
How to adapt the Silmarillion.
Is Tolkien's Middle Earth vast enough to have as strong a cinematic universe as Marvel? Marvel has a dozen films in development.
Yes.
The DC universe with their whole Dawn of Justice is
Yes.
going to have a dozen films in
Yes.
development plus
I
TV
see.
shows.
Yes.
So you've got the Potter universe, whether you're Crazy Creatures or Pottermore, you've got
Yes.
at least half a dozen movies that are going to come out in the Potter universe. So you've got those are 3 main universes with lots and lots of movies, with lots and lots of stories to tell.
Yes.
And again, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is from pulp comics, that are like 20 pages and you're done. So we want to know if Tolkien's Middle Earth and what has been published of Middle Earth, is there enough to create a cinematic universe that
Maybe.
extends beyond The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings?
And I would begin to answer that. I like the fact that you would posit this idea, Justin. And I'm so excited that you guys are joining us live, because we'll be talking with you, taking messages on the live hotline and in the live chat on Ustream.
Yeah, keep texting us your thoughts.
And let me just start with maybe you can take this theorem that you have put forward, and maybe it could be fully fleshed out so that what we see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is very impressive, especially the way they've continued to succeed in expanding it, even to this year's Guardians of the Galaxy, which was considered the dark horse of the Marvel family, an obscure 60s book that was only recently resurrected.
No big stars.
With no big stars and no big following in our pop culture
and no
canon.
big actors in the movie.
You talk about Superman.
Lee Page.
You talk about characters like Captain America or Superman. These are huge characters that have lived in iconography in our lives and in our minds as consumers of pop culture for a very long time. So here we go. The fact is, Tolkien is completely different because his stories are not a renewable resource. Our dear professor is gone. And we have Marvel writers who continue to write new Marvel stories. You have Harry
but
Potter.
they're not-
Wait, let me finish. You got Pottermore.
Okay.
Pottermore continues to expand because you still have J.K. Rowling who is writing it and adding more content. And Warner Brothers is going to mine that gold mine for more Harry Potter films that branch off from the original Harry Potter narrative. But Professor Tolkien no longer being with us is the first ingredient missing, and you have to stop and say, wait, this is a finite set of stories that are on the shelf. They can't be forever expanded and drawn out by new hands unless you really trust these new writers and new hands. But what is considered canon is still going to be Tolkien's original. The books that he has could be huge miniseries. They could be lots of series of films.
There's one single point,
but they're finite.
To argue the point that you just made. Marvel and Disney have not created any new characters. So the idea that because the author is dead, you can't create anything more, I don't believe that. Marvel has taken several decades worth of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's creations, and they're now bringing them into the cinematic universe.
Yes.
They're not creating anything new. They're not creating any new characters. They're not creating new worlds or anything like that. They're taking what's existing and they're working with it. So in that respect, Tolkien has created such a huge legendarium of characters and worlds and lands. There is absolutely plenty to work with.
There is.
For over 20 years, there's plenty to work with. So let's just get that out of the way.
There's plenty.
There is enough to work with on the scale of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes, there is plenty to work with, but there isn't enough room for reinvention and rebooting the way that Marvel properties are reinvented and rebooted every generation.
And wait, but why is that? Is that the fans' fault?
No, it's just the fact of fate and destiny.
You can definitely. Peter Jackson has proven
the creator is no longer with us. The author of these stories is gone.
And Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are not creating anything more. So they have nothing. And I know Stan Lee is not adding anything to these movies. Okay, and Jack Kirby's gone. So to your point, your point isn't valid.
Oh, is it?
The fact that just because the original creator is gone, that he can't add anything more, that has nothing to do with anything, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is working with a bunch of characters of creators that are gone or checked out.
Well,
so that's all there is to it, and there haven't been any new characters.
Maybe there's some nuance of my point that I have not successfully made, and forgive me if I'm not being quite clear. But I think there's huge amounts of room. Lots of narrative within the Silmarillion, and even in Unfinished Tales. Lord knows there's a lot of stuff in there that covers many thousands of years, many genealogies, kings and queens, powerful beings, monsters, Morgoth taking shape and going down and then rising again into a new shape, a vampire shape of a werewolf shape. There's creatures that Tolkien barely mentions in his legends, but they're very much there. Treachery, betrayal, the Oath of Fëanor, the Curse of the Noldor. So much great stuff in there. I was just saying that it is within what we know a finite published volume or two. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
but it could flesh out. Now, my question next is: would you rather to see it TV adapted or motion picture adapted?
All of the above.
You think?
I think it could be done in either format. But for the purpose of this conversation, let's just stick with theatrical and cinema. Television is a whole different conversation because DC is doing wonderful with Gotham, with The Flash.
Gotham's a great show, by the way.
And Marvel's doing
it's really
a
fun
lot of stuff with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Netflix. So television is a different conversation. For the purpose of this conversation, we're going to talk about making films out of stuff. And so
it's when you're on that Game of Thrones part of this conversation, you always want to stop and say, why didn't they just make a series of films? Well, we now know with hindsight that Game of Thrones has resulted as a much better entertainment product on television.
Yeah.
In general, we have to admit, than it ever would have been on film. Don't you think?
Yeah. So,
moving on.
But we know Tolkien's Middle-earth Legendarium is best suited for film.
Yes.
Period. End of story. Going off your first point, one could argue that Peter Jackson has actually already added more new stuff to the Middle-earth Legendarium than any Marvel movie has added to the Marvel Universe. If you look at all of the characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, every single Marvel movie, none of them are original new creations. You go to Peter Jackson's Hobbit, and Tauriel is an entirely new creation character. So your point of like, you couldn't expand much anyway because Tolkien's dead, I find that false. In fact, we've already proven that more original material has already been created for the Hobbit films than the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
But with mixed results.
Boom.
But with mixed results.
Results. Yes or no, results can be debated, but the fact is these movies are still making nearly $1 billion.
They are.
So, So
But have you read the
nothing is bombed.
nothing is bombed, but when I went on iTunes, just because I was downloading the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug, which is highly recommended over the theatrical version, and I was reading some user reviews.
Okay.
And you know what some of the people say, just in their like fan reviews of the film? You know, a lot of the fans are very, very, very happy with the films, and a lot of them who are more interested in fidelity to the books are not at all pleased, and they've criticized the addition of Tauriel as fan fiction or Mary Sue, adding in a character. You know, I'm not saying that I would not dismiss that results have some bearing on this conversation. I wouldn't dismiss that out of hand, because you want to make successful films.
And everything has been successful. There has not been
that the fans appreciate fully.
Exactly, and there hasn't been any case where there hasn't been an unsuccessful.
Well,
film,
there's plenty of stuff in the Silmarillion to go on without having to add completely invented characters and situations.
But it's
there's so much there.
Right. So that's the whole point of this conversation. There is enough in the Legendarium, Middle-earth Legendarium, to make a slate of films as big as Marvel's.
Well, yes, I would love it. I would love to see that manifest.
And there's plenty to work with, and we've
There
already
is.
and Peter Jackson has already established that you can extend the stories with new characters and new stuff without jeopardizing the original. Hardcore fans will argue right and left about Tauriel, but the fact is movies
they continue to do so today.
The movies still succeed, and the movies are wonderful, and everyone's still watching the extended edition. They can't get enough of it. So there is a lot to work with, and so the question is, there's the books, the stories that have been published, The Children of Hurin.
Yes.
Right? The Silmarillion.
Our friend in the chat just said that The Children of Hurin should all by itself be its own separate film. It's a glorious saga. Very Beowulf. Very tragic. I love it.
There's a lot to work with in the War in the North.
There is. Which happens after the War of Wrath, after all the stuff that happens in the Silmarillion is over. And one of my favorite chapters of the Silmarillion, the downfall of Numenor, which is Professor Tolkien giving his parallel story of the lost continent of Atlantis, which is told as the Numenorians fulfill their legacy in Middle-earth, actually on the ocean in between Valinor and Middle-earth on each side. Oh, wow, those Numenorians. Another tragic story.
So, Children of Hurin, War in the North, Silmarillion, what else?
The War of Wrath,
War of Wrath. You've got a bunch of stories that Peter Jackson...
The Fall of Gondolin, of course.
Fall of Gondolin.
Oh, amazing stuff.
And you could also...
and best of all, the great romance between Beren and Luthien, which is the greatest story, of which Aragorn and Arwen is but an aftershadowing.
So just a cursory bullet point, how many movies could be made,
including the Genesis stories about the creation of EA, and the relationships between all the spiritual beings and the creation of the earth. Well, you could get at least a couple of movies out of. I think the Ainulindale could be one movie, maybe all by itself, and then you've got the birth of the dwarves who came too early and were put back to sleep. Remember that?
Yeah,
and then
they woke up.
Then the firstborn children of Iluvatar, which were the elves, they were supposed to be the first to awaken.
Yes.
It's fascinating. That could be a part of the first film. The beginning of life and the beginning of all the names of the greatest beings in dwarves and elves histories, and the gods and goddesses of the angelic beings, the Maiar and the Valar spirits in Valinor. Don't you think that could be a beginning film? And then you could move into the Silmarils, the creation of the Silmarils,
yes,
and the Oath of Fëanor,
which we're just going to start to get into on the next Hobbit film.
The great evil giant spider Ungoliant,
yep,
who was the forebear of Shelob. And how about her being Ungoliant being in cahoots with Morgoth to try and destroy the two trees of Valinor and steal the Silmarils?
Isn't that the time
What a great
around
epic.
the
That could be your
Balrogs?
next two movies.
Isn't that the time of the Balrogs?
The original Balrogs who were in service of Morgoth.
And that's plural.
Yes.
That's plural.
Oh, there was more than one.
Smaug is the last dragon,
Yes.
and the Balrog is the last of the Balrogs. Like
Yes,
these
that's
were
right.
giant creatures. We got a text message.
This is an interesting text message we just got. Go ahead.
Yeah. It says Marvel is a constant expanding universe with multiple universe with different incarnations of heroes in each one. Correct. But there's a lot to draw on their the Marvel comic book universe because there's different parallel universes, stuff like that. But for the purposes of the Marvel cinematic universe, Kevin Feige in today's press conference said it's all one universe. The Guardians are in the same universe as the Avengers.
Yes.
You know, it should everything's happening at different times.
And
Doctor Strange will be in the same universe.
When Star-Lord left the Earth in 1988 or 89,
earlier than that, but yeah.
when he was abducted as a boy at the beginning
Yeah.
of the film, it was our Earth at the same exact time when I guess Tony Stark would have been in his late 20s, maybe finishing up his PhD. Do you think Tony Stark in the 80s would have been in his late 20s or early 30s?
So for the purposes of the cinematic universe, they've kept it all together, and you know that is it's possible. It's technically possible and feasible. Proof is the Wachowskis' Cloud Atlas. You can do a film of at multiple epic times in history
Across very vast separate times.
Across very vast separate times. You can't. It is possible. I'm not. The execution on it may have been a little weird, but it is possible. We can do it. And there's
possible.
a bunch of movies.
But are you proposing that as your favored way to do it?
No,
Is that what you think is the best way to do it?
How would you do it? Because there's not enough in the Silmarillion, each of the 5 Silmarillion stories or books, for them to each to be 5 films. Because a lot of people on Twitter have been saying, Silmarillion would be a great trilogy. Other fans are like, psh, do you know how much is in the Silmarillion? It should be 6 movies. Just like the Avengers is 6 movies. The Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 2 was 6 movies. But I don't think there's enough in the Silmarillion for 6 movies. But there's enough to work with.
I would say,
and
definitely.
And you can compress time. The whole point. Remember, Peter Jackson in the original Lord of the Rings. If you watch the extended edition, all the bonus features, Peter Jackson and all the writers say the most difficult part of filmmaking is compressing time.
That is
And
a fair thing to say.
Peter Jackson's primary job as a filmmaker for Lord of the Rings is taking what's in the book and compressing time.
Well, that was the objective with the Lord of the Rings. With the Hobbit, the film adaptation has been an expansion, not a compression. And the results have been
I disagree with that because
different.
What we're seeing,
noticeably different in the way the films work.
Well, what we're seeing in the previews of the third Hobbit movie is that time is once again being compressed. The elves are marching at the same time that Lake Town is being destroyed. You have a lot of different storylines happening at the same time. Time is compressing, so it's a better narrative that connects everything together. So I think within the hands of a capable filmmaker, whether it's Peter Jackson or not, time can be compressed, and I think
Whoa.
Silmarillion can do it. Oh,
Listen
call
to
on
that.
the hotline.
Did you hear that horn? That's the TheOneRing.net calling.
Hello, you're on live.
Hello there? Anybody there? Nope.
Oh, they hung up.
Oh, bummer. We were so looking forward to that call.
You can call us on the hotline 530-644 ringtone of epicness.
The ringtone of epicness. Hello there. Hi. Did the connection come through this time? Hello.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on? Yeah.
Well, hello there. How are you, buddy?
Hey, that's too good. That's good. I saw a feed on Twitter about the Silmarillion movie, and I think it would be a great idea, but you still probably need to be making about 6 movies to cover all the depth.
Yeah.
Do you really think there's enough in each of the chapters of the Silmarillion that they could be each their own movie?
Well, you know what? The only thing that I had difficulty with the Silmarillion was I can only read about maybe 4 pages at a time.
Me too.
You know,
Me too.
to get basically similar names, so many similar names with just different variations to their name.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it would definitely, it would be definitely a task. You know, I think maybe a synoptic documentary of the Silmarillion would be better, where it's not going into so much detail, where you lose a person's ability to comprehend what it's all about. You know.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of the hardest parts of reading the Silmarillion is definitely slogging through those long genealogies and those names of family lines that sometimes seem very biblical when you read them.
It can't. Well, you know, it just shows where Tolkien was at with his intellect. You know, I think he wanted to make it more historical.
Yes.
The beginning of the ages and the beginning of elves. You know, and I'm reading the Children of Haran, and you know, it basically it's almost the same thing. You know, it's like you could tie it in a lot with the Silmarillion. You know, with the names and everything like that. You know, it's definitely deeper work as Tolkien. You know, it's tremendous. Like when I first started reading the Silmarillion, I was just thinking back to, whoa, you know, this is an traditional, book that, like the, Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings is, just totally different.
Indeed. Well, I think that there would be at least, out of the Silmarillion, there would be maybe at least 6 or 7 films, feature length, that could flesh out so many corners of that history, because there's a hell of a lot to go but my instincts tell me that it might do better as a Game of Thrones style multi-season format.
Right, exactly, like a series, yeah, and Disney it that way, but yeah, absolutely, but even with that, it would just feel like, it would be tremendously hard to keep up with when you see genealogy. It's just, for anybody to make a movie out of that, you would have to, I don't think you would do as well as 4 other movies, or 6 other movies, because of the fact that people might not be able to sit through it.
No, believe me, I'm quite certain that any good writer or team of writers would have to work their way entirely around those long-winded genealogies and cut right to the essence of the drama and the plot, the motivations of plot between major players. That's something that you'd have to leave in the trusted hands of a good writer to handle all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes. Well, thank you very much for calling into the show. We're going to move along quickly so that we can have other callers and other messages. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Very good. More to follow.
If you watch some of this television series called American Horror Story,
Which I'm a huge fan of.
but it's a similar premise where you've got every season is a different time period.
That's the anthology aspect of it. It's
Yeah.
a great anthology.
So
Different time, different place, different people.
So you could do the Silmarillion and all these other stories as standalone films. So the question is there any through line of the Silmarillion, like a character or something that is consistent among all 5 books of the Silmarillion, where you could like Tony Stark, he cameoed in the Hulk. He did 2 Iron Man movies. He cameo. He wasn't a cameo in Captain America, but
but there. I know Tony. Yeah, Tony.
So
I see where you're going with that. There's a couple of characters who are almost on the main stage the entire time through the Silmarillion, and that's Morgoth, the Dark Lord himself, and then a couple of other players. That would be Durin, the great first father of all the dwarves,
of Thorin and
Durin himself,
and Keely,
and Galadriel herself.
So you're telling me that you could actually cast 3 or 4 or 5 actors for a multi-part cinematic universe, just like Marvel does. Marvel says, "Hey, Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange leads into the Defenders. We're planning on 5 movies. Can you sign here?" Just like they negotiated everybody's contract for multiple pictures.
Yes, that's true.
So you could do the same thing for Middle Earth. You could actually start at the Silmarillion, make it a trilogy. And have same actors as their characters progress through the history of time.
We could have Benedict Cumberbatch appear as Sauron, the very, very earliest version of Sauron, underneath his big daddy boss, Morgoth.
Wow!
Yes,
this is
you
amazing. This blows open the whole visual. Like now we're making a visual of like what a film series could look like.
You could not possibly reduce all the content and the major storylines of Silmarillion
into 6 movies.
Into 3. You just said 3.
3, 6. Tell me 5. 5 books. 5
I would
movies.
say at least 6 or 7.
7 books for 7 movies for 5 books.
You got 8 movies out of 7 Harry Potter books.
You got 6 out of 4 Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you got 6, and you got 3 movies out of 1 Hobbit book. So, yeah.
We got a text message that says, "Have Andy Serkis play every character."
That's great. That's very funny.
So the question.
Well, someone said here in a text message that came to the hotline, and I wanted to read this before I lose track of it.
Grand.
Hollywood wanted to make a Game of Thrones film, but George R.R. Martin did not feel that the proper material could condense and still tell a good story, and he rejected the idea of a movie himself.
Durin the Deathless.
Yes.
Woo.
Durin, imagine,
that would be an amazing film.
It would be so great to see the Silmarillion come to life.
How old is Dane?
Dane Ironfoot? I don't know, really.
Because he's older than Thorin.
Yes, he is.
He's
older than Thorin.
He's older than Thrain.
I wonder if it's possible if Dane fought in the Battle of Moria, in the Battle of Azanul Bazaar.
With Thror?
With Thror and Thrain.
Oh.
And did you see the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug yet?
Not yet.
You haven't? Oh, really? That's too bad. You guys, you're in for a treat. I'm about to write on my brand new jiggery pokery tablet. I'm going to write a review of the extended edition, and something I wanted to mention right now before we go any further.
Dane dies in War of the North. Oh, I want to see that movie
Dane
right now.
dies in the War in the North?
Give Billy Connolly his own film.
Does that mean Dane...
you give Billy Connolly his own film and buff it out with other amazing Scottish actors?
Oh, meaning during the War of the Ring. Yeah,
Woo!
okay.
Woo! Woo!
You're funny. You're very funny.
I want to see this film. This is not humor. I really want to see this film.
It's funny he spent so much time reading the Silmarillion and he knows what it is, but he won't read The Hobbit. It's funny, isn't it?
And it's funny how much I absolutely adore Desolation of Smaug and everything about the Hobbit films so far, unequivocally.
What really caught me by surprise in the Desolation of Smaug Extended Edition is that the additional material where Beorn is talking to Gandalf, and Gandalf has a big important scene with Thrain the missing character now restored in Dol Guldur sequence,
Yes.
you realize why Gandalf is motivated the way he is motivated, and you realize that Gandalf is no longer willing to be persuaded by Saruman. It's a very important piece of the psychological puzzle for Gandalf, and we start to see things on the world stage a little bit bigger, a little bit more differently. But did you know, in the appendices, the behind-the-scenes stuff does not even include a chapter about Dol Guldur. There's a behind-the-scenes discussion of Mirkwood, Thranduil, the Barrels Out of Bond, the Master of Lake Town, and lots of Smaug, lots of Bard and his family, and everybody in between. There's nothing on the Desolation of Smaug Extended Edition that I've seen from the behind-the-scenes that talks about Thrain and the restoration of his character into that storyline, which I think is so psychologically interesting, especially because it motivates Gandalf in specific ways. But aside from that, I'm going to write an email to our lead producer, Michael Pellerin, who's the director and the producer of those behind the scenes. I'm going to ask him what happened to that content that discusses Dol Guldur and what will soon be the Battle of Dol Guldur that we'll be seeing in the movie Battle of the Five Armies coming up very soon. I want to find out what happened to that stuff. But back to the conversation about the Silmarillion. Excuse me for digressing.
7 films
At least.
of the Silmarillion.
At least.
What are those 7 films? Break it down real quick. What's the one-liner for each film?
Of Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin, all right? That will be your middle film. Going a little bit earlier, The Oath of Fëanor and the Doom of the Noldor, and their conflict with Morgoth over the Silmarils, and the destruction of the Two Trees, okay?
All right.
That could be your 2 films prior to that, okay?
Hold on, I need
Yeah,
to
really. All right, your first film could be the Ainulindale, the creation of the world, and the appearance of these angelic beings as they fulfill.
I don't think that's enough for a film.
Yeah, as they fulfill the music of the Ainur and the whole creation of the world.
I don't think that's enough for. All right,
That first film could end with. Maybe that first film could end with the Oath of Fëanor and the kinslaying. Yeah, that could be a great point where we even see Galadriel at the end of the first film, and the kinslaying, and then the great exile of the Noldor leaving Valinor on their way to Middle Earth.
All right, wait.
That could be fascinating.
All right, first off, let's list the 7 movies real quick.
But you're talking about great migrations of people that happens over 1,000 years. Long migrations of people.
Yeah. So
I mean, it depends upon how fast you want to truncate that into, like,
that's the filmmaker
bits of
stuff.
film.
Let's list. I got my pen and paper right now.
Okay,
All right,
first film in our Silmarillion universe,
Yeah.
cinematic. Let's call it the Silmarillion cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Although that's a little bit too much alliteration, I'll do it anyways. The first film, the Ainulindale, the creation of the world, the Genesis project, the beginning of this whole.
I'm already checked
world.
out. You check, yeah, like that
And
word means nothing to me. Who's the character? What's the story?
The creation of the world.
That's not enough. Genesis has never made it into a film because even our own creation of the world has never been made into a film. It's just not that interesting.
Are you
Try
sure?
Again. Try again.
Well, I haven't even finished my sentence.
Fëanor?
You're
Did you say the Oath of Fëanor?
I think that the opening chapter begins with the creation of the cosmos, the deities, the angelic powers, the Valar, who have governance over this newly formed land, the first appearance of the dwarves, the elves, the men, the earliest beings on this planet.
Right.
Maybe not the men, maybe we'll just go as far as the
What's
beginning
the
of the elves.
story, though?
The story is the Two Trees of Valinor and Morgoth's first attack on Valinor and his coveting of the Silmarils, and the Oath of Fëanor is the end of the first film. The Oath of Fëanor, that he would fight and kill anyone who would get in the way of him reclaiming the jewels.
All right, so this film could be called The Silmarillion because this is all about the creation of the Silmarils and the beginning of everything.
And the Silmarillion Part 1 could then lead into Silmarillion Part 2, where the elves have gone over to settle in the new lands and new kingdoms of Middle-earth. And then they can have a second film conclude with the Silmarils going off to different parts of Beleriand, and the creation of new kingdoms. And
Boring. Who dies? Who dies?
Where would it end?
Who's the battle? Who's the battle?
Maybe it could end with Tuor and the fall of Gondolin.
All right, yeah,
in the second film.
I think you're.
How about that?
I think you're approaching this from not the most advantageous perspective.
Well,
let's just.
There's just so much.
I
So
know.
much. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
if you say that the Silmarillion can only be done in 7 films, so what are those 7 films? One of them is Beren and Luthien, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But you're already jumping ahead of where I was.
That's fine.
I was just chronologically going through them.
So you don't have to go chronologically like that. But just like Peter Jackson can do, he can take this story and put it to this character, and he can completely change everything.
Since we're speaking to a very conversant fan audience who's completely knowledgeable in the Silmarillion, how about blending the Ainul Dale and the Quenta Silmarillion as a beginning half of Quenta Silmarillion into an opening film? Then the Quenta Silmarillion could finish with the second film with the Fall of Gondolin. You could have a
Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, that could be a second film.
There you go.
All right, your third film could be The Tale of Beren and Luthien.
Okay.
Okay. Your fourth film could be The Children of Húrin.
Okay.
There you go. Your fifth film could be The War of Wrath, the destruction of all Beleriand, and the final onslaught against Angband.
Okay.
Your next film could be The Downfall of Numenor.
Numenor.
All about Numenor.
Okay.
And then after that, you could have another film that goes into of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, and it talks about how, and that could be your ultimate bridge film between Silmarillion and the world of the Hobbit, where we meet Sauron in fair form, trying to convince the elves to make rings of power and teaching them the art of ringcraft, and Celebrimbor,
all the way up to the slicing of the ring.
All the way up, and wow, that could go right on up to the Last Alliance of Elves and Men. That could include all of that.
Okay.
So how many films do you have here?
The rings.
That's 7 films.
That's 7 films.
That's 7 films.
So just for fans'
Okay,
sake.
well, hold on. No,
Okay.
Fans are very, very, very much involved. Cliff, I think you should mail this to PJ and Warner Brothers. So, yeah, thank you.
This is the start of something. This is why we're having this discussion. Here's what we know. Marvel is doing 12 films in their cinematic universe. Star Wars is doing at least 6 more in their universe. DC is doing 12 films in their universe, plus TV shows. So you've got, and Harry Potter, they've only announced 3 films, but there's going to be at least half a dozen more Harry Potter films. The interesting thing, so those are Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, DC, right?
Yeah.
Warner Brothers. Guess what? MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, that oldest of movie studios.
They only MGM had distribution rights for The Hobbit.
Yeah, but they have a great and solid relationship for making quality movies because they made The Hobbit with Peter Jackson. MGM originally hired Guillermo del Toro. The MGM was creative enough to have the foresight to hire, because New Line Cinema did the first Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then New Line Cinema doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so MGM, Warner Brothers just distributed it and helped pay for it. But when it comes down to making the movie, New Line Cinema did it, and with The Hobbit, MGM did it. Even with MGM. Yes. They also, I think they own RoboCop. They own James Bond. MGM has been a wonderful steward of the James Bond legacy, upwards of 20 films. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They've been the most wonderful steward of the James Bond franchise.
So MGM has the reputation to raise the money and to steward films for decades.
They do.
That still maintain.
They do.
That still maintain the original. Fans will argue about, Timothy Dalton should have never been Bond or whatever like that, but
you could say that about George Lazenby if you want to.
The films still stay true to the original.
To Ian Fleming.
Yes. So that's why we think that if Disney's got all of their cinematic universes, Warner Brothers has all of their cinematic universes, Paramount has their cinematic universes, and of course we're talking about
Star Trek
and Transformers.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So MGM is now in a place to have their own cinematic universe, and because they produced the Hobbit trilogy, MGM is in a position.
Perhaps they are. Yes. But
to have their second universe beyond James Bond.
are they in a position to write a check big enough to Christopher Tolkien?
I think
So that Christopher Tolkien would allow the rights to the Silmarillion to be sold?
I think Christopher
We'll see about
Tolkien
that.
is 90 years old.
Bless him.
Bless his heart.
Because if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have any Silmarillion at all.
Yes,
We wouldn't have had anything
this is another
from his father's manuscripts.
This is another
Nothing.
point. J.R.R. Tolkien himself, the professor, only published Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So anything else,
Yes, he did.
Anything else, even if it's family, should be considered extensions of the original. So Children of Hurin, The Silmarillion, all that stuff that was published posthumously is just as equivalent as, you know, putting a filmmaker in charge of other Middle Earth films. Like the leeway is there, and just like in fact, there has been more leeway and more opportunity for creation
yes.
in the Legendarium posthumously
Yes.
than there has ever been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, there have been no new characters created in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in the Middle Earth Legendarium, we have new characters. So, I like this I like this slate of 7 films.
Yes, it is. It's an excellent.
All right.
And I like the suggestion from one of our chatters in the chat room who said the Silmarillion subtitle, "The Light of the Two Trees," which is great.
That's great. I don't even think you need to do it. Just like
that would be a great opener. The Silmarillion, The Light of the Two Trees, which would be the beginning of the story, and then the next one, Quenta Silmarillion, The Oath of Fëanor. I love that. That's so great.
We can talk about naming all you want, but I think The Avengers was just called The Avengers. It brought everybody into the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, with those other feeder films, they were just called the character names: Iron Man, Captain America, The Avengers. I think the first film could start the Silmarillion, J.R.R. Tolkien, Peter Jackson's The Silmarillion, and then from there you just go for on the Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, but that just leaves behind the nomenclature that's been established for the 6 Middle-earth films that we have right now, which is main title, subtitle.
So you think Silmarillion is the first and second movie only?
The Silmarillion, if you want to do some real storytelling condensing of the Genesis chapters, the beginning of the world, the fabrication of this universe, and the roles and duties of all the gods and goddesses within this realm, if you want to fast track all that and go straight to the Silmarils, then the Quenta Silmarillion and the Oath of Fëanor stuff could be crammed into 2 movies. But I'd hesitate to do that because I think the Ainul Dale is much more interesting because you start to look at some of the personalities of the deities. Let's take a look at the Immortals.
I'm lost.
What about Luke Evans, who played a very angry Zeus in the Immortals? And we had our Superman, Henry Cavill, who played Perseus. Remember? Okay? You saw that film, and you're like, okay, this is gorgeous, great action set pieces, nice art direction, but you felt a little lost in the interpersonal relationships between the Immortals, the gods and goddesses of Olympus. In fact, we didn't hardly get any of their interfamilial relationships. I would like to see the familial, weird relationships between the Valar and the other Valar and the Maiar.
I think you can get
I'd
there.
really like to see that.
Okay, so we've got our set.
Because it informs who the wizards are. The wizards are Maiar spirits. And to see what their lives were like way back in the Blessed Realm, to see what the Maiar spirits were
already
like
lost.
before they became Radagast,
Look,
before they became Gandalf.
I don't want to see that.
I think it'd be great. I think that'd be great.
For the purpose of compression of time and making a fantastic film that works, I think you can still have Ian McKellen as Gandalf. You can still have Sylvester McCoy as Radagast in the form that we are familiar with. It's fine. Look, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're changing things again. Age of Ultron, right? In the movie, they're saying that Tony Stark created Ultron, like the artificial intelligence that Tony Stark created eventually becomes Ultron, right?
Yes.
And the robot overlords start to take over the world. Well, in the comics,
yes,
it was actually the guy from X-Men: Days of Future Past. The short guy. What's his name? Who's the small short guy in Days of Future Past?
My mind is melting.
You know who I'm talking about? The scientist
Yes.
that
Yes, but his name evades me at the moment.
that he creates the Sentinels.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
So in the comic books, it was that guy that his artificial intelligence for the Sentinels lead to Ultron. So the cinematic universe, the Marvel universe is changing things. Trask. Thank you.
It was Trask. Yes. Thank you. That's right.
So I say our next exercise here, we've determined that the Middle Earth, based on just stuff published, not just on the published word. There are 7 potential movies with stories and characters that are strong enough to hold their own in an entire 2-hour movie. So those 7 movies are basically the Silmarillion, the Fall of Gondolin, the story of Beren and Luthien, the Children of Hurin, War of Wrath, the Fall of Numenor, and the creation of the rings.
This is fascinating.
Okay, so the next exercise is that we've got our slate of 7 feature films. What are
at least 7? We have some people who have suggested, and thank you, Eruana, that the Arda Chronicles could be the overall main title. The Arda Chronicles subtitle, The Silmarillion, and then the Arda Chronicles subtitle, The Light of the Two Trees, or whatever you want to call it. That could be good. That's very, very good.
I love it.
But, also, some fans say I disagree. The Istari should be different in this potential movie than the ones that they take on in the Third Age. I'm with you, Streamer 4049.
So they could actually hire younger actors and
well, they're going to be portraying completely different angelic beings. When they were sent in physical form to be wizards,
so they could be
they
other
were
actors.
sent in the guise of aged men. They wouldn't appear as aged men until they arrived in Middle-earth in that form. To see what they were like in the Blessed Realm, to see how Gandalf lived as Olorin, the Maiar spirit, before he became Gandalf. I'd like to meet Olorin as a spirit, and to see what he was like living and hanging around with the other Maiar and Valar.
Let me throw a name at you.
It's such an intriguing idea to me.
Olorin, James Caan.
James Caan?
Is that the age that you would expect based on the literature? You said they came to the world as old men.
They were sent in
so
to be
are
wizards
we
in the disguise of old men.
A 2014 version of James Caan?
24-year-old version of James Caan? Maybe.
Or Gene Hackman? Are we that age?
Maybe, yeah.
Are we?
Yeah, well, no, it doesn't matter if they're in their 20s. I mean, the actors or actresses who portray these Maiar spirits and Valar, they need to be. I don't want to see Taylor Lautner and bullshit like that casting. Like they put Taylor Lautner in The Immortals to portray Poseidon, and he barely has 2 lines of dialogue.
Well, let's
it's not about how young they are. It's just that they need to look and be,
different than
completely different angelic beings.
I get it.
And yet have
sold.
And yet have something in their eyes.
Yes.
To have some spirit.
We
similarity
saw stars
to
in
Ian's
Lee Pace's
eyes.
We saw stars in Lee Pace's.
Yes.
You know what? Let's go through these 7 films real quick and just breeze through what characters are consistent among these 7.
Okay? Azog the Defiler in our chat room is asking, how old is Galadriel anyway? She saw the light of the trees. She's just over 7,000 years old.
Hank Pym.
Yeah, almost 8,000. Over 7,000, in between 7 and 8,000 years old.
Hank Pym. Yes, Hank Pym, who's Ant-Man, I think, right?
Yes, Hank Pym was one of the Ant-Men.
Right?
Yes.
Is that? You know what? You might be right. Thank you for correcting me. I think it wasn't Trask. It was Hank Pym in the comics, who's Ant-Man that creates Ultron. But in the movies, anyway,
yes.
There's enough to change. And Peter Jackson. I mean, he took Peter Jackson in Lord of the Rings, our beloved Oscar-winning Lord of the Rings. He took whole paragraphs of dialogue and took it out of this character's mouth.
And put it in another character's mouth. And to very great effect.
To great effect.
To great effect.
It's you can still do these movies based on these stories, and make it movie-like and still work. So the question is, all right, we've got 7 movies here. Who's in in each film?
Okay,
so
familiar characters from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, who are going to be in the very, very first Silmarillion movie,
Galadriel
would include Galadriel. If we go all the way up to her presence and the kinslaying at Aquilonde, you know, the Oath of Fëanor and all that stuff, if we carry the first Silmarillion film all the way to that point,
who would be a younger Galadriel?
Then Sauron and Galadriel. That means you could have both Cate Blanchett and Benedict Cumberbatch. You'd have to have a whole new
But wouldn't they have
actor
to be younger?
play the big, big, bad daddy Dark Lord, who's the original Dark Lord, Morgoth. So, don't know who that would be.
But elves are
Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi is Morgoth. That'd be fun.
Elves are unaging, so you would get Cate Blanchett, or would you get...
There's a lot of discussion about how far a baby elf or a child elf will grow through adolescence. And then at about 30, 32 years old, time kind of freezes for them and they no longer mature, it seems. But that's another metaphysical conversation for another day about how elves grow. But they seem to stop maturing in their immortal timeline at about 30 or 32, I think. Give or take
All right, so
a step.
The first... the Oath of Fëanor, the first movies, Morgoth, Sauron, Galadriel. Who else is like a main character that would be through
main characters who would go through all of this?
Who would be in the Silmarillion? Who would be in the Silmarillion that would be significant enough to go through? Just like in Captain America, we saw Black Widow.
Oh, I see.
You know, Black Widow didn't get her own movie, but she was in Captain America, and she was
1 and 2, and she was in Avengers, and she was in...
Was she in...
Thor 2?
Thor, yeah.
She was in Thor 2, The Dark World.
Exactly. So,
I think
so
Black Widow... No, I don't think Black Widow showed up in Thor 2.
No, she did. Or was it Iron Man 3?
Yeah, Iron Man 3, okay. Brain check.
So
and then you've got Nick Fury, who's in every one of them.
Right. So who are some of the... Who are the characters... She's like a main character.
Well, okay, Sauron carries through in every single one of these, all 7 of them.
Sauron is in all movies.
Sauron is going to be like our Voldemort. He will be in the foreground and in the background of every single one of these Silmarillion films. This is a hypothetical thought exercise. I want you guys to remember this.
And Benedict could play all that.
And Benedict could play all of them. He's young enough to play all of them.
Oh my gosh.
And Galadriel would be in half of them.
Which ones? She would be in Rings. She would be in the last one.
She'd be in the last one, and she'd be in the first 2. She'd be in the first 2 and maybe in the last one.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if she'd have anything to do in the Children of Húrin story.
That's fine.
And maybe in the War of Wrath. Maybe she'd be in this one too.
The War of Wrath.
Yes.
All right.
Morgoth. Now, responding to a text I got on the hotline.
Yes.
Hello, Drew. Very glad you're enjoying our little show for the first time. Thanks for coming on live. The question about Battle of the Five Armies, looking at the teaser trailer, why does Gandalf have Radagast's staff? Because Radagast most likely passes that staff off and says, here, Gandalf, you'll need this. Use it. And Gandalf had his staff completely burned and destroyed in the Desolation of Smaug, both in regular and in extended editions. It happens at the hands of the necromancer, who is revealed as Sauron in the same way. So Radagast, for some unknown reason, must just physically hand it off to Gandalf and say, here it is, giving you this, which means poor Radagast probably doesn't have his staff for the rest of the Battle of the Five Armies movie.
To answer that, just look at the poster, the official international poster for Battle of the Five Armies. You know, the one with all the
posters? I love that international poster.
Yeah, and
it's so much better.
It's
a great poster.
Which staff is Gandalf holding?
You tell me.
You look it up, fans.
Look it up, fans.
All right.
Look at the international poster for The Hobbit.
So where's
Battle of the Five Armies?
Where's Morgoth on the second movie?
Morgoth is going to be in all of these up until the War of Wrath. Okay. That's the last one where he will appear.
Okay.
So he'll appear in movies 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Love it.
Okay.
Okay.
But
where do the dwarves enter?
He will be sent away and locked beyond the world at the end of the War of Wrath.
That's great.
And then Sauron will take over and become the new badass Dark Lord.
Okay, so we got
Sauron will be the main Dark Lord in Numenor, the story of the Akalabeth. in the Númenórean story.
Okay, where do the wizards come into play?
The wizards don't appear until the very final film. There are no Istari anywhere.
So even
To the
the
end.
early version of Radagast and
Oh, they'll appear as Maiar spirits in, when we spend time in Valinor. But for a lot of these Silmarillion films, we're going into the lands of Beleriand, and we don't even go back to the Blessed Realm.
Okay,
we just don't.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
you won't see them. You won't see the Maiar except for in the first couple of films.
Okay, so that's a perfect,
Wizards appear,
that's
and Palantir will appear in this final film.
Palantir. That's a prop.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a prop. Yes.
Okay. Dwarves. Where do we get introduced to Durin?
Oh, wow. We'll be introduced to the Dwarven histories very early in the Silmarillion, probably in the second film.
In the second film.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And they'll be
I like
featured
this.
very heavily in
Dwarves.
Children of Hurin.
Dwarves.
Yeah, lots of
Durin.
dwarves.
I'm sorry, Durin.
Durin, and dwarves,
Durin.
yes.
Okay. War of Wrath.
Well, you know what?
Numenor.
Ustreamer54581 says that dwarves are a footnote in many of these histories and don't feature much. Well, we'll see about that. Because, the dwarven history should be, we should take what notes...
It is as rich as every other race.
And what notes we do have from the appendices of the Lord of the Rings and from Unfinished Tales.
And the letters.
And the letters. We will fulfill stories in the Silmarillion for dwarven. And hey, Eruana Undomiel says that our very own Ben Barnes, who played Prince Caspian in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
I loved Prince Caspian. It was the best of those three theatrical Narnia films.
Yeah.
How about Ben Barnes to play Beren in the story of Beren and Luthien, and Tom Hiddleston could play Morgoth? Ooh! How about Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch being our two bad boys?
Oh my God.
Morgoth and Sauron.
Fangirl,
Fangirl craziness.
Just done.
Yeah.
Done.
The fangirls just got their panties in a twist.
Oh my gosh.
I love that
All
idea.
right, so
it's pretty good. Pretty good idea.
All right, so Durin is in the second movie.
Good idea.
Durin is in Children of Hurin. Is Durin in the War of Wrath?
Oh wait, Tolkien girl doesn't agree with me and thinks that Prince Caspian was bad. I don't know. Watch the third film, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and tell me what's bad.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on.
The Durin, was he in the War of the Wrath?
Oh gosh.
Or Numenor? Or
No. The story of Numenor involves what would be like Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn's ancestors. The ancestors, Elendil.
Elendil.
Wow, you've got beings in these
then,
stories
and then
who had to choose between being, having the fate of a man or the fate of an elf in their immortality. You have these beings who are half and half, or sometimes three parts.
Wait, question on the...
But the Númenórean outreach in that history would be Aragorn's forebears, and we would learn a lot about.
So we'd get introduced to Elendil in the Numenor film, and then
Anarion and Elendil,
and then in the final of this series in the Rings, that's when
we'd come back to Isildur. Isildur would show up if you want to do the closing battle of this last thing, to be the last alliance of elves and men.
Yeah. And
then you could bring Elrond back onto the stage. Elrond could be there with Isildur as well.
Where is Elrond earlier?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Elrond would appear.
This is much before Aragorn and Arwen. Much before. Okay, so Durin is only in 2 movies, which is fine because Hulk is only in a couple movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
They haven't decided, have they, to give Hulk another separate Hulk movie by
himself? No,
they haven't.
Have they? No, the answer is that Hulk doesn't get his own movie, but
because they tried twice with middling results.
So they got,
even though the second one was better with Liv Tyler.
So they got Hulk right on the third time on the Avengers.
I thought they got him right the second time with our boy Edward Norton and
here's the thing about Doctor Strange
and Liv Tyler. I really liked that.
Benedict Cumberbatch, who's going to be Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange teams up. Doctor Strange teams up with Hulk. So it's Benedict Cumberbatch teams up with Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk.
Wow.
To create the Defenders. So
that's going to be
that's
interesting.
the end game.
That's
the end game
to
of Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's
he teams
a
up with Hulk
very interesting
and
place
creates
to be.
the Defenders. Okay, so we've got 7 movies here. Again, we're looking at what if Marvel Universe has been broken up into 3 phases. There was Phase 1. We're currently in the middle of Phase 2. And then
Of the Marvel films, we're in Phase 2.
Phase 2.
Okay.
And then today, Marvel announced Phase 3 with films like Black Panther and Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And
Oh yeah, the story. Oh, Erovandi has very correctly said that that it would be great to have Lee Pace cast as Thingol. I would love to see the story of Thingol and Melian, and they're going to be all up in these.
that would be like a Baron and Luthien.
They're going to be
like
be
a
part
B
of.
story of
Yeah, they're going to be an A and B. There's going to be an A-B story
Right.
in the Baron and Luthien movie,
Yeah.
and it'll be Thingol and Melian and Baron and Luthien. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Great.
And I love the ideas we're getting from the chat room. Really, really great ideas.
This is great.
So let's see. Someone else said that Elrond, as a very young Elrond, could appear. Where would a young Elrond
you
appear?
guys. That's what I enjoy about our
In the
chat.
War of Wrath? Okay.
the
Very
War
young
of-
Elrond could appear in the War of Wrath.
Okay. All right. So
Now I have to look at my notes and see if Elrond was alive back then.
real quick before
That's
you
very
do
exciting.
that, Durin's only in 2 movies. Do the elves or do the dwarves have any roles to play beyond the Fall of Gondolin and the Children of Viren? Does not really. I mean, there isn't much to work with. But where would they make sense? Would they make sense as a B story in the Numenor, the Tale of Numenor? Where does kind of fleshing out the dwarf again? There isn't
Well,
much.
we need to look at the dwarves' earliest settlements and their earliest kingdoms. So we need to see how Moria was discovered and settled.
So that's
right?
around. That's after the War of Wrath.
Yeah, that's
So-
definitely going to be. You could have.
That'd be like a B story for our Numenor.
And actually, I think it'd be a better B story for of the Rings of Power in the Third Age.
There's a lot going on in that Rings movie, but we'll
Well, a lot of the fans in the chat room said, "Why stop at 7 films? Why not have an 8th film and be a bridge film?"
we've just determined that
Again, guys, this is
the
a hypothetical thought exercise.
the available text
only.
that has been published by Tolkien's progeny allows for, we believe, 7 fully fleshed out films. There's a lot of stories to deal with. You could just like Peter Jackson did, he turned The Hobbit into a trilogy. So inside any of these stories, you could expand it into 3 movies. I mean, just like Avengers is getting 3 movies, Captain America got 3 movies, Iron Man got 3 movies.
Yeah.
Any of these you could turn into its own thing, right? Guardians of the Galaxy is getting 2 movies.
That's true.
So
wow, this is fascinating. Elrond was born in first age 532. Wow. You know what that means? Wow. He was born in the first age. That means he could. Certainly. He's the son of Eärendil and Elwing. Eärendil, who chose to be a man. Elwing, who... grandson of Luthien. Wow. He was born in the refuge of the Havens of Sirion in Beleriand, late in the First Age, soon before its sack by the sons of Feanor. Elrond and his twin brother Elros were captured and raised by Maethros and Maglor, the sons of Feanor. Though at first there was no great love between them, eventually Maglor took pity on them and cherished them, and eventually grew to love them. Oh, so Elrond would have been very active during the First Age, and you could have had young Elrond in the War of Wrath.
So
yes, very good.
Just to flesh out the tale of Numenor, we've got the completion of Elendil's story in the Numenor film. So that would be a great thing to bring in Elrond into the fold. So movie 6 out of 7. That's where we introduce Elrond at the end of Elendil's story.
You introduce Elrond in movie 5 in the War of Wrath. Okay, because
but you can play with this. I'm trying to think of
how
much.
You totally have him born.
How much story do you have to work with in Numenor versus? All right, so we figured out the dwarves.
It seems like the whole 6th movie, like the story of Numenor, might be considered like a bubble episode. a bottle episode in a TV series where it's separate from everything else that's happening in the storyline, except these characters are critical in their relationship with Sauron and his ongoing treachery and how the men go to settle the kingdom of Gondor.
What's the
So we learn the roots of all Gondorian history from the Númenóreans.
Gondor. Okay.
Yeah, Gondor. The history of Gondor begins in this. So Quenta Silmarillion 1 and 2. Okay, the first Silmarillion movie, The Light of the Two Trees. The second Silmarillion movie, The Fall of Gondolin, which there's a whole lot of extra stuff there to talk about what happens with Tuor and the Fall of Gondolin. That could maybe be its own separate movie. And then you've got Beren and Luthien as film 3, The Children of Húrin as film 4, The War of Wrath as film 5, The Akalabeth, The Downfall of Númenor as film 6, and Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age as film 7.
All right.
But if you really want to make film 8, I wouldn't be surprised that you could push another one in that mix.
Once you get into this, like the first two that make $1 billion, and then you're just like, all right, let's
just keep going.
Look, Peter Jackson took the smallest of stories. That's a good question for you.
What?
How big of a story is The Hobbit, page per page?
Mm-hmm.
How big of a story is The Hobbit compared to some of these other stories? Because the Silmarillion is 5 books.
Well, in the Silmarillion, Professor Tolkien might spend one paragraph talking about something that happened over 800 or 900 years.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The Hobbit, he gets down into full first person, or I should say second person narrative, and tells a fully fledged story. The joy of reading the Silmarillion is that there are brackets of huge time brackets that just go by in a paragraph. If you wanted to extrapolate them and flesh out those stories, you could invent in between the lines. You could read in between those lines as much as you want.
Fashina says Gondolin has to be its own film. Where does Gondolin...
Yeah, Tuor on the Fall of Gondolin. Yeah, it probably should be its own film.
Well, we've got that. Yeah.
Yeah, but this was intended to also wrap up and include, the migration of the elves when they leave Valinor.
Yeah, we need
after they kill their brethren, and the sons of Fëanor continuing to uphold the oath and track down the Silmarils. And that stuff with the Silmarils continues in film 2, film 3, film 4, and all the way down to film 5, The War of Wrath. So you don't even lose sight of the Silmarils until you get to the 5th movie in this proposed series.
The sheepish line in the chat room says, in the Bible, the Old Testament is thousands of years, and the New Testament is only 35.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Yes, I know, huh? How about that?
So there's a lot you can work with if there are fewer pages. Like, there's still a lot to work with. And the Legendarium is... the rules have been set up. The rules in the Legendarium allow for a lot of this storytelling.
Emily, our dear Emily... Stargate Geek, that's you, Emily. Hello, welcome to the show. No, the Skype is not turned on yet. We'll turn it on in a second. Why 7 movies? She says, why 7 movies? Why not a TV series of 20 episodes each, 1 hour long? Well, that's what I said at the beginning of this conversation. But we're following a mental exercise that Justin is proposing.
I think there is a way, there is room, and there is a way to do a TV series about anything Silmarillion, but I think it's better. It's more of a. I want to see the Middle Earth on the big screen. It is meant for the big screen. We've been emotionally, psychologically, and physically prepared to experience Middle Earth on the big screen in IMAX.
However, you've got something that involves high risk gambling of investment with a film. And a feature film is always the biggest financial gamble of any project that you'll make in Hollywood. I think that investors might be a little less skittish by looking at the successful format of what Martin and HBO have done with Game of Thrones. They might financially want to back this project on television more than they would want
The problem with television, though, is if you start down this path and then you have a bad season, or something like that, or you lose one of your actors because he suddenly becomes a hot movie star or something, then that's it. Like, a significant rewrites have to, and even even George R. Martin has said about Game of Thrones, he's not involved in the television writing. Someone else has to do that. He's busy with his own stories. He understands the changes that they're making, which are not insignificant. And you better believe that a television series of the Silmarillion would heavily change a lot. I'm saying that the films, because they're compact, they're just 2-hour experiences.
They are 3-hour experiences.
3-hour experiences, but you can tell a complete tale, just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Every movie stands on its own, as well as feed into the broader mythology. Every movie stands on its own. And, you know, if a TV show gets canceled mid-season, if a TV show gets canceled at the end of the season, there's a lot of questions that will be opened, and then suddenly, oh, you know, financially this doesn't make sense anymore.
I see what you're
with
saying.
a series of films, you can plan accordingly to have each of these stories be self-contained.
Responding to the chat room right now, Ustreamer5084, can anyone please tell me if the scene where the dwarves get taken before Thranduil is in the extended edition? The answer is, it is not restored back into the runtime of the film, but they show it in the behind the scenes, and they show it in detail, and Peter explains why they took it out.
Really?
Yep.
Where he's like sitting all casually on the throne, just like, what's up, bro?
And all 13 dwarves are taken up right before Thranduil, and many of the dwarves, including Balin, played by the wonderful Ken Stott, say things like, "Is this your idea of hospitality? Treating us like prisoners when we're starving and hungry?" You know, which is direct from the book. But that stuff it was filmed, and they talk about the extra scenes with Thranduil that were filmed, but they're not restored into the extended edition, no sir. But no ma'am, and there you go. That's the answer to that.
So, all right. So we've got a wonderful slate of $100 million movies.
$100 million to make, or they're going to make They're going to make $1 billion each in return.
Yeah, at least $100 million to make. But you know,
at least $100 million to make each.
If you check out TheOneRing.net news post from this last week since our last show, you'll see that the budget for the Hobbit trilogy has ballooned to nearly $400 million.
Gosh, yes, it did. Yes,
$400 million just to make the Hobbit. So you can imagine
that's a lot of expensive changes.
Each of these, you know, is and each of the Marvel universes. I mean, they didn't start at $100 million, but pretty much right now they're all coming in at around $100 million each. Minus Robert Downey Jr.'s salary.
Oh gosh,
which is its own line item.
That's
above
a
the line.
whole nother story. Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, we've got this. I think we have a slate that is watchable.
You do?
I think this is a slate of 7 films. Again, a Marvel Cinematic slate is only 6 films at a time. This is 7. Any of these 7 could be extended, as Peter Jackson has done, into 2 or 3 movies, right? But each of these 7 films are their own story. I think they...
Emily says that 7 2.5-hour films is less hours than 20 1-hour television episodes.
Yeah, but television's unstable. Azog the Defiler had it right. TV is very unstable, and things get canceled all the time. And especially expensive shows like this. This is an expensive show, and I'm more worried about keeping the actors involved. Because, I mean, look, Sherlock is only 3 episodes a season, you know, which allowed Sherlock to Benedict to become the movie star, right?
Yes.
Because he only has to do 3 episodes a season. You know, the Silmarillion.
Well, each episode of Sherlock is a feature film length.
It's 90 minutes. Come on.
That's feature length?
Not really. When was the last time you went to a 90-minute film? They're all 2 hours.
Actually, wasn't Bridesmaids, like Oscar-nominated Bridesmaids, was only 90 minutes long? Wait, Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas is only 75 minutes long.
That's an animated film.
That's feature length.
That's different.
Barely feature length. But 90 minutes is feature length. I get what you're saying with this.
So we're proposing that the Middle-earth cinematic universe can continue if MGM wanted to do it.
Yes.
Every studio has
Middle-earth cinematic universe. That's M-E-C-U.
MICU.
MeQ.
So
M-E.
every studio
capital C-U.
all the major studios have two big cinematic universes. Disney has Star Wars and Marvel. Warner Brothers has Harry Potter and DC. Paramount has
Warner Brothers has Middle Earth, Harry Potter, and DC.
No. They did not make the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. They only distributed it. Warner Brothers did not make Lord of the Rings. New Line Cinema did.
Okay.
MGM.
But New Line Cinema was completely bought and absorbed into the functioning body of Warner Brothers.
It was separate.
And MGM only had distribution rights to The Hobbit, not production rights. Let's get that correct.
Okay. So anyway, Paramount has Transformers and Star Trek.
Yes.
So MGM has Bond. And MGM could, if they wanted to, have a Middle Earth film slate of 7 films, which we propose as...
but MGM is no longer involved with any ownership of rights. But if they wanted to, you're saying they could pursue the rights. I see.
I'm saying if they found someone to commit $700 million, let's just call it $1 billion, by the time marketing's in $1 billion to make 7 films, we're proposing the Silmarillion. The heralded return of Middle-earth to the big screen would, of course, be called the Silmarillion in big, bright lights.
Yeah.
Subtitled The Light of Two Trees, or something of that sort. So the Silmarillion 1 and 2.
The Light of the Two Trees.
The second movie called
The Silmarillion, The Fall of Gondolin.
And then the third movie...
The Tale of Beren and Luthien.
The fourth movie...
The Children of Húrin.
The fifth movie...
The Tale of the War of Wrath.
The sixth movie...
The Akalabeth. Subtitle, The Downfall of Númenor.
And the seventh movie of this slate...
Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age.
And so throughout this story, we've got familiar characters who everyone loves and adores. We've got Benedict Cumberbatch as Sauron, Kate Blanchett as Galadriel.
Oh yes.
From the first Silmarillion all the way into the last. And in those movies, you have wonderful characters. Like in the second movie, you were introduced to Durin and the line of dwarves.
Oh yes.
Which is Thorin, Fili, and Kili's ancestor, and he's in 3 or 4 of these movies. He's kind of like Captain America. He just kind of pops in. He's got his own story, but he kind of pops in
from every now and then.
And you've got
it would be so cool to be like really deep involved in your Beren and Luthien love story, and then let's take a little side glance over and see what's happening over with the dwarves over there. I love that.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
There's so much you can do. You've got the history of Angband.
We're gonna make a hashtag M-ECU trend. We're gonna make that trending. Okay.
MECU.
Having a fascinating conversation about the Middle-earth cinematic universe. Let's make this trend. Oh wow!
And these 7 movies are all standalone. There's enough story written by Tolkien and his son.
Yes.
There is enough story in each of these, and that can be fleshed out with tales of dwarves and tales of men. It's not until the 6th movie out of 7. It's not until the 6th movie that we are introduced to the
world of men.
The world of men and the building of establishment of Gondor and the sword of Elendil.
Well, we're introduced to the world of men way up here in the Tale of Beren and Luthien.
Yeah,
remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not. But as far
we're
as
talking
Gondor,
about the Second Age. That's
the Second Age.
We leave for the First Age of Middle Earth and go right to the Second Age after the War of Wrath.
So it's not until the 6th movie where we start to look at Elendil and Gondor, a little bit of Durin, and then the 7th movie brings it all back to where we started with Lord of the Rings, with the history of the wizards and Isildur and his battle against Sauron, and slicing of the Ring of Power and the fall of men. I mean, the 7th movie is just as interesting as anything else. I think all of these movies, and you know what? Here's one thing that I noticed about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it's all action. You've got 20, by the time this is over, you've got 20 films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not one of them are a straight up love story. Just like You know, action.
There's a real love story in Baron and Luthien, obviously.
Yeah, but give us a slower movie, right? There's the thing with Middle Earth that none of these other cinematic universes can do. The thing about Middle Earth is that there's actual stories and there's room for love story. There's room for slower films. Not everything has to be hack and slash and like, you know, end of world and end of days. Like throughout this film, the downfall of Numenor and Baron Luthien, they're two of these 7 movies that are a little slower. And it's an opportunity to bring people in like Mike Nichols or other directors.
Oh, yes.
You know.
Yes, I see what you're doing.
Inarutu, or anybody else, or who did Gravity?
Gravity
and Children of Men.
Well, that would be
and the second and the third Harry Potter film.
My favorite director.
Who did the third Harry Potter film?
Brain check. I'm thinking. I was confused by thinking of Iñárritu.
Cuarón.
Yeah, Alfonso Cuarón. That's it.
So
thank you.
Alfonso Cuarón. He knows how to do gritty stories that have a very particular pace. And the Children of Hurin. There's many stories in here in the Middle Earth Legendarium, and you could call it the Legendarium Cinematic Universe. The LCU, the Legendarium Cinematic Universe. I like, but someone like that could get involved, because each of these stories are very unique on their own. One's a love story, one's a little slow, one's introducing characters. Only one of them is like a prequel sequel thing, like the Silmarillion. It's all action. You've got room for different types of directors to join and do some fantasy. You know, instead of doing laser guns and laser swords, like directors and actors are going to get tired of laser guns and laser swords.
Yes,
and
they are.
And I think we will too. I think to counter all of the laser swords and laser weapons of Batman versus Superman, and Superman destroying cities, and Star Wars in the galaxy far, far away, and the Avengers is already future forward, right? Everything in the Marvel universe is like already has laser guns and portals to another dimension. This grounds us back in reality. Chainmail, swords, fire and flame. Like this,
indeed, yeah, hardcore stuff.
You know, more. There's more we can. And
how about a climactic ending just proposed by someone on the hotline? Would the final 7th film end with Isildur refusing to throw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom, and shows him walking away, then cut to end credits?
Boom.
Doesn't that sound great?
What movies are Balrogs in?
Well, what movies are Balrogs in?
Yeah. Excelling.
There are Balrogs here in the War of Wrath, and probably probably Balrogs up in the Fall of Gondolin.
How about all the dragons? What's his name? Axelathon? Who's the biggest dragon of all?
And Calagon the Black.
And Calagon. Where's he?
Calagon the Black.
Where is he?
He's up in Angband.
What? Where? No, I mean, like, where? What movie?
What movie is he in? Oh gosh. You really are putting my Silmarillion academic knowledge to the test today. Where would?
But these are movies I want to see. I want to see Balrogs in the Silmarillion.
And Calagon the Black would be in the Fall of Gondolin.
Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
So these are movies,
and also Glorfindel. Glorfindel, the one elf who never ever got to appear in any adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. Bakshi in the 1970s took Glorfindel out and replaced him with Legolas. Peter Jackson took Glorfindel out, replaced him with Arwen. Remember? Mm-hmm. So all of this great Glorfindel character could conceivably, in his very first incarnation, have a grand...
Where's Glaurung?
Where's Glaurung?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Glaurung. Sorry. Yeah. It's hard to get your dragon straightened out. Glaurung would be in the Fall of Gondolin. Yes, that's right.
And Calagon is in the War of Wrath.
I'm very, very glad to be corrected, Ustreamer4049. Thank you very much for that. Hey, another question in the hotline. What's the size difference between Numenor and Gondor? I would have to take a look at some online maps, but Numenor was a vast island, a very, very, very big island nation. But I think the lands of Gondor may be twice or 3 times the geographic size of what Numenor was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Gondor and all of its attendant lands would be larger than what the island of Numenor was.
Well, this has been a wonderful
Yes, and
discussion.
Calagon is killed by Erindil. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Glaurung would be in the Fall of Gondolin part. Okay? You guys are brilliant. The way that you're coming in with these ideas in the live chat. It's excellent.
Well,
very, very
this
good.
has been a wonderful conversation. I am so glad that we had this. You know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Cinematic Universe, more Harry Potter, more James Bond, more Transformers,
We're all-
more Star Trek.
We're all in agreement that these cinematic universes are being expanded, and the driving force is because somebody wants to make money off of it.
But the thing
Always.
is, geeks grew up.
Always.
All of us
that driving
geeks
force.
that always wished that these movies were made, now they're studio executives and they're directors. They're capable, you know.
They are capable.
So we're at the point now. We've come up with a slate of 7 feature films that are all interesting on their own, that would attract the biggest stars and the biggest talent, or
And the biggest directors, yes.
biggest
yes,
directors to
yes.
do wonderful things. And this would keep Weta employed for another
It
15
would.
years.
In this film about the Rings of Power in the Third Age, we could totally talk about the Witch King of Angmar and his attempt to take over the northern kingdoms, and all that stuff that happens. We could cover a lot of ground there, couldn't we?
So the it's possible. Anything's possible, but we think that this is the start of what a Middle-earth cinematic universe would be. I think we should write this up into an article.
I think we should.
and post it on the
With
site.
some more
we
thought.
are out. It is 8 minutes past the end of the show.
Emily, this is your last chance to say goodnight because we're about to close out the show.
Yeah. Then my point with the TV series is if they made all 20 episodes and then aired them, you wouldn't have to worry about them being.
Well, that's an idea. I
they'd
love.
already-
I love the idea of making it a television series. I am more attached to the idea of doing a TV series than Justin is, but he thinks
It's
that
too risky.
He thinks it's too risky. That, like what happens, some actors will get hired away
It's
to
only
work.
risky.
To work. Well,
It's only risky if you only made a few episodes at a time.
no.
And that's what happens. You make a few episodes
That
at a
is-
time.
that's how it happens.
You make 3 Sherlock
And-
episodes at a time. You make 10 Breaking Bad episodes at a
And-
time. You make 6 Mad Men episodes at a time.
when your lead,
It's not enough.
But when your lead actors are done with a commitment, they're gonna not be committed to the next 4 years, and they'll get signed off to some other project. Which is, you know, there was a supporting actor who's attending Daenerys Targaryen, and that actor has been completely replaced by a new actor in the new season of Game of Thrones that we just saw, and you know, it would be kind of really weird, wouldn't it, to have, you know, a different, totally different actor that we've been relying on to play Sauron. We wouldn't want to lose Benedict Cumberbatch at any time during these, 7 films, is what we're saying. But anyways, last thought, and we'll say goodnight, Emily.
Right.
Say again?
Right then.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night. Oh, it's great to hear you. Great to hear from you on the show. Thanks, Emily.
And a final text message: should Michael Bay direct the 7th and final film, because there will be explosions everywhere? By the time the 7th film comes around, it'll be 12 years from now, and hopefully within 12 years, Michael Bay will be maybe a more respected director. Let's just say it that way.
I don't have anything else to say about that.
Thank you so much. The chat room has really helped with this episode. You can join us every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, here from Meltdown Comics above the Nerd Melt Theater. Nerdist podcast films records on the door
Right over here next door.
right next to us. So we're in the middle of Geek Central here at Meltdown Comics, who today is their 21st birthday, Meltdown Comics been around for 21 years.
Really? Their 21st birthday?
21st birthday's today. So happy
Wow.
birthday.
Happy
to
birthday.
Meltdown Comics, who is bigger than ever. They were on NPR. They have a show on Comedy Central.
Isn't that amazing?
They host the hottest comedy podcast with Nerdist. I mean,
can't
they're
believe
just
it.
exploding.
I was here right when they first opened their doors, when they were across the street. When
Yeah.
they were over there in what is now Restaurant Chibo. And I have to say, congratulations, Meltdown, on your 21st birthday. I'm glad that you're old enough to drink now.
Yes.
It doesn't explain all this illegal drinking you've been doing for the past 21 years.
Never
but
mind.
Today, you're old enough.
Well, I love this slate of films. I want to see them.
This
I
is
want to cast them.
A very robust slate of films. It's very interesting. I'm sure we can expand more on it. Thank you, everybody in the chat room, for joining us. Please follow us at TheOneRing.net on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook and click like. Please like us. And I know that you guys love our show, and we love doing it for you. We're going to bring you more goods this weekend at Stan Lee's Kamikaze. If you're going
Downtown,
to be in
LA.
Los Angeles, come to our big presentation on November 1st. I believe it's Saturday, November 1st at 4:30 in the evening, 4:30 in the late afternoon. And we're going to have a great presentation and a sneak peek at the upcoming Battle of the Five Armies. I'll be hosting and moderating the panel, and we're going to have a great time. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much.
Have a safe Halloween. And I guess we look forward to a Battle of the Five Armies trailer in front of Interstellar when it opens.
That's right, next week.
And that's going to be when?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Yep.
All right, we're looking forward to that. You guys, behave yourselves. Have an excellent Halloween. And we'll see you downtown LA at Kamikaze this November 1st. I'll be there. Cheers. Bye.